Welcome, everybody. Happy Thursday. I'm so excited to be joined by this great panel of experts today. We're going to be talking about AI, but we're going to really be breaking it down into three distinct categories. But first, we've had a little flip, if you can't tell. I am Jared. I'm the co-founder of Rev Genius. I am moderating the panel. Jason, the previous moderator, the CEO of Rev Genius, will be taking Jesse Oulette's spot today. Then, of course, we have Jessica Pelly, co-founder and CEO of Loyi. Welcome, guys.
Hi.
Thanks, man.
So, really, what hypes me about this so much, and I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Adio. Adio is building essentially the next generation of CRM, powerful, flexible, data-driven, but more importantly, AI at the root of it and flexible to meet your actual needs. So we're going to be breaking down three key parts today. One, tailoring outreach via AI. Two, which kind of was like our first introduction to AI as in general. Second, automating, mundane and important high impact activities. And then third, AI driven insights for better CRM and decision making, but also who to target. So, with AI at the root of this, Adio is unstoppable. But I wanted to start with the first part here and invite my incredible guests to unpack it. So, guys, tailoring and leveling up sales outreach with AI. What you got?
A lot, I guess, but let's try to break it down. So I think there are a couple of things that are working and a couple of things that are not working yet, and I think it's very important that we embrace that so that we can make the best out of it. I think Jason has a lot to talk about this. We kind of arranged the order to make it a bit easier, but from us. So what we do is usually we help companies with the automated outbound and personalized messaging, and we see a lot. And you have different types of tools like AI, SDRs, research tools, and some people are complaining that with AI, the outbound becomes like way harder, way worse. And okay, well, so what? And I think what we have seen is that AI can definitely help to enable teams, enable outbound, but it has to be done the right way. So if you look at the top of the funnel, you can really leverage AI as like an intern to help you out with account research, persona research. Once you have the data, the AI can help you understand your prospects better, and you can use that information for personalization. So I think the key is you as a human should always know who to go after and why. And you should train and enable an AI, who's your intern, to leverage the technology to personalize, for example, on scale.
No, that's great. I think one of the things that people miss a lot of times in the focus on AI and the natural language aspects of it is everybody's really focused on what it's actually generating from like a content or actual the language aspect of it. They neglect or don't spend enough time paying attention to a lot of the stuff that comes ahead of that actual outreach. And arguably, this is where AI can really shine. Some of the most is trying to be able to identify, okay, how do we bucket these different personas, bucket these different companies? How do we, come up with tailored talking points for one versus the other? And to me, that's where AI really shines and becomes a superpower within that. It's that type of stuff that would be very, very manual and very task intensive to be able to go and slice and dice this and come up with that many different levels of and types of customization, be able to go after those. So for most companies, most teams, like that was labor intensive and was prohibitive because of that. And so even though best practices or even goals or desires within that company would have been to be able to take it to that level of nuance and sophistication. Those are just not really options to be able to do prior to AI. There's just too much work. Coming from demand gen primarily within my background, one of the places I always begin is, okay, do we have a large enough population to justify that level of customization and tailoring? With AI, that number, that critical mass, just got a whole lot smaller versus where it used to be. And so that it really enables you to be able to go and be able to really tailor and attack what you're going after within this in ways that you never really could have without the assistance of AI. And then, of course, you can use it to do the stuff most people are familiar with, which is actually the creation of the content and stuff like that. But that's also where it can go off the rails really easily. Jessica, I'm sure you've seen a fair bit of that on your side.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you touched upon a great point. It's not only like saving the time for the research, for example, to create like from a long list a short list. I mean, sometimes when companies have like 10,000 leads to begin with, it would have taken a team maybe a year to go through those accounts. Now you can do that with a similar sized team, like instantly, so to speak. But there is also another point, and I think that's even more important. Not only does it save time, but it also improves your conversion rates. Because as you said, okay, we are shrinking kind of who we want to go after and why, but we actually understand the why. And that's so much more valuable because you can really penetrate the market way faster if you really understand, okay, why is this my best prospect today? And what are the insights that we are gathering that we can with confidence say that this is my best prospect to work on today.
Yeah, and arguably the timing on this couldn't be much better with sort of the breakdown on high velocity, growth at all costs type strategies of, hey, we're just going to feed a bunch of reps, a bunch of data, and push it through a bunch of steps of automated outreach and all of that stuff. And in my opinion, thank God all of that stuff died. But just being able to purely push huge numbers through and knowing that a certain amount's going to come out the other side, that really sort of broke down a few years ago. And so then what's the answer to that? You've got to you've got to do all the things that we always knew we should be doing, and everybody kept trying to hit the easy button to get around. But if you're not going to be able to just push high volume through, then you've got to get more targeted with what you're doing. You've got to get more customized with what you're doing. You got to go deeper with those because you can't push the same amount of volume. You've got to get more effective on converting out of a smaller volume, a smaller amount that you're going after. And that takes a lot better understanding of who your targets are, as well as the ability to be able to sift and sort through that and customize relative to those.
I agree. And I think the biggest mistake that I'm seeing, or maybe you guys are also victims of it, especially on LinkedIn or via email, is when people still try to reach out to everybody and try to personalize it. So every second email is, oh yeah, we went together to Yale, or oh yeah, I see that I don't know that you're a member of Riff Genius. Like, oh yeah, great. That's not working. I just think that I think the most important thing is first from a long list, narrow it down to the short list, and then from there personalize at scale. I think when people make the mistakes, and we see it on LinkedIn comments and so on, like it's sometimes nonsense, is when they don't use this long list and shorten it, because from the long list they try to personalize and it can never be good because there is no fit, there is no timing, there is nothing.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest areas where AI goes off the rails for people is, where they're trying to use it to be that easy button again. And an underappreciated aspect of AI is to use it really, really effectively. It's not really necessarily that you're saving yourself time and energy, it's you're shifting it upstream. And so you've got to take the time and care and effort to be able to feed into it what's needed in order to be able to have it automate those stuff downstream from what you're doing. And so if you don't take that time and attention to be able to really build that out, then it's going to spit out stuff that's going to be minimally valuable, that's not going to really customize in ways that are going to move the needle relative to that audience, things like that. And a quick anecdote on that side. So, I run a growth marketing agency on the side, and almost universally, like whenever we onboard a new client, we'll ask them, okay, hey, give us all your documentation, your training, all of that stuff that you would give to a ref around, your personas, ICPs, use cases, pain points, all of that stuff. For the most part, we get like a page or two of like some bullet points, and it's like, well, we're going to have to go and create this all from scratch for you guys. On one occasion, we had somebody give us the opposite. We got folders upon folders of PowerPoints and notes and all of this stuff. Like I literally had to go take it through ChatGPT and have it summarize all of those things, because it was just too much information. And it spit out like I had close to a 70-page summary document of all of this stuff. But in the process, it occurred to me, holy crap, ChatGPT now has all of this go-to-market documentation in it. Like I just built a model for their entire go-to-market. And what I was then able to do with that was just insane. Is like, okay, now I've got 18 different ways I can slice and dice this. I know all of the use cases, all of the pain points, down to like this individual persona at this target ICP company within this category. It's like, you start doing the math on that, and it's like you've got hundreds of different customization points within it, and you've got actual good things to say about it because you've fed all of that detailed information into it. But of course, you got to go and build all of that stuff at the front end to be able to do all of that really cool stuff on the back end. And I think that's an underappreciated aspect of it. It's not necessarily that it's saving you time and effort overall. It's just shifting where that time and effort needs to occur so that it can then do, some of these really cool, sophisticated, high velocity things downstream from that. Jerry,
Yeah,
you look
I
like you're
agree.
about to say something.
Yeah, so I think you bring up a good point. And we're foreshadowing using AI to better outreach. I'm just curious, like to stay on the copy part of it. Everyone here can write in the comments a bad AI message that they've gotten. And if you can't, how you open your email is you go to gmail.com or Outlook. If you forgot your password, hit forgot password, because that might be the exception if you're not in your email. What are some of the elements of a good AI driven email? We see so many more bad ones than good. It's rare. I see a good one, but I'm curious the elements both in the copy as well as what led to you. That's interesting.
So I think that's something that Jason touched upon on. I think we still need to make it interesting. We need to make people curious, right? We need humor. And I think this is something where a personal touch still needs to be and should be in there, right? Because why should I listen or read something of someone that, it feels like summary. So I think the best what I've seen, and obviously I always save the good outbound messages because I want to learn from it. But what I've seen is that people are really educating themselves about the prospects, and that's where they use a lot of AI. And it might be that the AI pre-writes based on those insights, some summaries or some notes or some icebreakers. But at the end of the day, it's still a human in the loop that updates it and sends it. And I think that's really a healthy way of approaching it. That might change in half a year. But I think right now that's what I see where the biggest success comes from is leverage AI to do the research, give you the insights, really understand who you want to go after and why, and then, put your own touch into it.
No, I couldn't agree more. I think where it goes off the rails for a lot of people is giving it too much autonomy and not having that human layer in it. Didn't like I talked about at the just a few minutes ago. It's garbage in, garbage out. If you're not feeding it enough information, enough detail, all of that stuff, then you're gonna have it spit out stuff that's not going to be great or dialed in. But the other part of it that I think is equally underappreciated is the training element of it. And so, even in that case where I've got all of that incredible go-to-market notes and information and stuff like that, I still had to go back and sorry, my puppy is dragging a bully stick all over the room. Uh, but even after all of that, some of the stuff that was spitting out was not dialed in. And so I had to go back through and I had to keep retraining it. I had to say, okay, well, you missed this, or we need to tweak this here, or pay attention to that. And if you're not constantly iterating on what it's spitting out, I mean, you really have to treat AI as if it's a new member of your team. It's going to take time for them to ramp. You're going to have to spend time holding their hand. You're going to have to give them direction. You're going to have to go and help revise it with them, stuff like that. And so, the more you treat it as if it's an actual person you're trying to onboard and ramp, the better this is typically going to go, as opposed to like, hey, I just, instead of treating it as a piece of automation or tech or whatever, that you just sort of build out and then let it run. It's going to work a lot better if you have that in, follow up with it. Hey, let's look at what you're actually delivering, what you're actually spitting out. And let's go and train and, figure out how to improve that, how to dial that in.
Yeah, when we onboard customers, it's sometimes very interesting because everybody thinks, okay, let's do here an AI strategy, and they come and they want to go from 0 to 1, right? And we're like, okay, let's step back a little bit. Like, this is something that we cannot do, right? Because you will not be happy with the results. We have to start small. We have to gradually increase then what we do with AI, but let's start small to see if the small things are working first before you kind of roll out. And that's exactly your point. Like, if you hire an intern, you first 2-3 months, you are not satisfied with the results either, but you don't fire this intern. Most of the time you coach the intern, you teach the intern, and so on. But with technology, people are really impatient and expect perfection and that it solves their own problems. But at the end, they don't realize it's still an intern that we need like to onboard and on-ramp, like you said, Jason. And it's something that people oftentimes forget. And I always say, we really need to engineer the science of sales so that we have space for the art of sales. But when you bring in AI and tech, it's not like you can engineer everything in sales, because it just needs to shift, and you have to learn and leverage what you're learning along the way. And that's the only way how you can get any meaningful results out of it. So start small and grow with it.
Yeah, one thing to add to that, and then Jared, I'll let you move us to the next topic, which I assume is where you were going with it. But I mean, one of my philosophies in general, but especially when it comes to tech, especially when it comes to automation, is start as simple as humanly possible, and then add complexity only as necessary and justified. Whenever you start too complex, and whenever you add too much complexity all at once, then it makes it virtually impossible to go and figure out, okay, what worked, what didn't, why, what do we need to be able to go tweak, rip out, any of those things. And so, whenever your system is too complex to begin with, then it's really, really hard to figure out, okay, what's driving what within it. Same story if, even if you start simple and then you add a bunch of complexity, it makes it really hard to be able to dial that in, test things, figure out what's actually driving and causing what within it. And so a general philosophy overall, but especially when it comes to automation tech like AI, start as simple as you can, and then only add complexity as it's needed. And part of that as needed is, okay, we added that layer of complexity. Did that actually move the needle in the direction that we wanted it to, before we say, okay, yeah, that needs to stay as part of the new system.
I think AI is still in the early innings. There's not a ton of feedback loops in different AIs, meaning setting up KPIs within the AI, and having yes or no and like recalibrate based off of that. It's more I scrape your Twitter stuff, I put it in your profile. I don't connect with your CRM, so I don't know if it worked or not, or your Calendly, assuming that you're using a meeting booking tool. So I can't recalibrate for you. The human still needs to be there. That's where we're at today. As somebody who's worked for a predictive analytic company 10, 15 years ago, there will be a time when the human will slowly be out, but we're still here today. And, moving towards automations, one of the things that AI is so powerful for, automating routine tasks to focus on high impact activities. Jason, what kinds of tasks lead themselves to AI and automation?
Yeah, I think this is another one of those underappreciated aspects of it, where everybody's so focused on the actual, language layer to it. AI is incredibly powerful and arguably even more powerful and certainly, in most cases, more reliable on the analytics data side of things. And so, one of the pieces that I had, mentioned earlier with that client, where I had all of that amazing go-to-market data with it, was the ability to be able to segment, not just be able to create customized content, stuff like that, based off of these different segments within it, but I actually had it go through and tell me, okay, what are the primary segments out of, this broad-based ICP and personas? And so it was like, okay, let's bucket these into, no more than 3 or 4 or whatever categories it is. But yeah, based off of a variety of factors, size of population, number of use cases, pain points, stuff like that. Give me the most impactful groups out of this, and then now go through this entire list of companies that I exported out of LinkedIn Navigator or whatever. Drop them into each one of these different categories. And so now I've actually got all of this stuff actually bucketed the way that I needed to and stuff like that. Anybody that's spent a significant portion of their career in marketing or demand gen or anything like that knows that that segmentation is incredibly difficult
Hmm.
to do. I mean, just look at titles alone. You've got 50 different ways of saying the same role within a company based off of a title. So like, how do you standardize within that? Those are the types of things that AI is just incredible at being able to do, that used to, up until just a couple of years ago, be a nightmare of a process from a data standpoint, management standpoint of, okay, yeah. And so in my opinion, the actual creation of the customized content based off of these different, combinations of personas, types of companies, stuff like that, is actually the least valuable piece of the puzzle. It's the ability to actually be able to effectively bucket these individuals, personas, and companies into these different categories. That's actually really, really the powerful piece. And it's been something that's been so hamstrung for so long on the go-to-market side of things.
Hmm. I agree. And maybe in the past we bucketed it in 3 to 4 different buckets. I think now the buckets just become way more granular. I mean, when I look like at our customers, how they are trying to bucket companies, it's really insane how creative they are. So for talking about like this topic, met yesterday, it's asked a company that is doing like this automated CRM updating tool, and they came to me and they're like, hey, can we use your tool, because we really need to scrape job description and find which companies actually have that pain point. I'm like, yeah, that's true. You can simply just go through job descriptions and look at who's mentioning that pipeline hygiene is a thing and who's mentioning that an AE needs to update in CRM. Here is your super narrow list you can use for segmentation, and okay, this company cares about pipeline hygiene. We have a tool to automate this, so that's, I think, the beauty, that hopefully the matchmaking will be better in the future when people stay creative, or when, like Jason said, machine learning models or AI models really try to help you identify your ICP, and then you just don't have to worry about it at all. You just need like your holistic perspective and aligning it with your strategy. But other than that, I think AI can help really to bucket it, narrow it, and do really cool things for you.
Another big one that I've seen within it is, of course, anytime you're trying to do any sort of modeling within data, or if you're trying to do, predictive analysis around, I hate the word lead scoring, because I know that that's been a hole that we've all gone down many, many, many times before. In fact, that was one of the biggest, early on use cases for AI, was trying to do, better predictive lead scoring within that. But whether it's pipeline health monitoring, whether it's lead scoring, whether it's churn prediction, whatever, all of those types of modeling, typically will only work off just a handful of variables. Because of course, the more variables we plug into it, the more complex these models get, and the harder it is to be able to go in and be able to say, okay, is this accurately predicting or not within that? And so systems in general in the past, as well as individuals within companies that were trying to do this, just by the nature of it, were limited just to a handful of variables that they were able to go plug into these models. where the more they added into it, the more noise it typically created. One of the great things that I see with AI, especially as it continues to get more sophisticated, is its ability to be able to take additional data points, additional things to plug into those models. And one of the great things with it is it can actually do that on a sort of case by case basis. So one of the reasons why it becomes so much more difficult if you add too many variables within a model is those variables don't apply equally across that population. And so if you're trying to apply, a large variable set, call it a dozen, but, each individual instance of that may only have 3 or 4 of those variables that are pertinent to it. For the mix of what those variables are going to be relative to one versus the other of that population is going to be different. I know it's getting pretty technical there with it, but the ability to be able to swap in and out weight in real time, stuff like that, the stuff that, AI does a really, really good job at, that's unbelievably difficult outside of that, gives us an ability to get insanely sophisticated with the types of modeling that we're doing and the predictive analysis that we can do out of it. And it takes it to a whole different level than what has ever been capable of being done before.
Absolutely. And I think the crucial point is that you mentioned is the data that you have internally is not enough. So you definitely have to enrich it with stuff outside of your CRM, because it's just like limited. And there is so much beautiful information on the web. So what we usually do when we analyze an ICP is we hook to the CRM, look what are the best closed won deals, but sometimes we don't even take them all. We literally ask the customer, tell me your top dream customers and tell me your top customers you want to go after. And you will be surprised, like if we ask like different departments, everybody comes up with different answers, which is sometimes very shocking. So it's like an exercise for itself. But anyways, we take these companies and put them into our enrichment system, and we scrape literally the web on them, like websites, history of career posts, LinkedIn, financial reports, whatsoever, what is relevant. And then we cluster the companies based on textual data. So we use textual data to define an ICP. So once you have this qualitative data, you can cluster into different buckets. And it's way more insightful than, I don't know, industry size and title. But companies are very reluctant of using this feature of ours. And I never understood why. And I think what was an aha moment for me, and I think it's important to communicate it here, if we gave the customers, okay, these are now the customers you should be going after, these are like fitting your ICP, that should be your ICP, then they're like, yeah, that's what we anyways already expected, that's good to know. So why do I need like a tool to pay? If we give them other things and justify them, it's like a simple aha moment for them, but at the other end, there is something that they must trust, and trust towards what an AI spits out is very challenging to achieve if you don't have like the right reasoning. And we realized that maybe it's not so good to come into organizations to pitch them an ICP analyzer, but as you said, start simple. So right now we're just selling the enrichment tool, and they can then figure it out themselves, and they're way more happier than with our technology, even though we know that our technology performs better because the error rate is just smaller. And yeah, but it's a process.
Yeah, that external data piece of it, I'm going to date myself a little bit, but very first SaaS company I worked at, we were an integration between Salesforce and the inbox. And so we were looking at it, like, okay, we've got, through Salesforce, we've got all of this, access to all of this customer data. The inbox, we've got all of this access to actual communication going on, between people at the company and people at, the target customers, prospects, stuff like that. It's like, hey, this is a wealth of data that surely we can go and mine and be able to pull insights out of. And so this was, call it mid to 20 teens. And so here in Knoxville, we've got Oak Ridge National Lab as one of the big national labs in the US, and there was actually a fairly good sized team doing AI research and stuff there. So we poached a bunch of researchers out of Oak Ridge National Lab. They're like, hey, here's this data, we've got CRM, we've got inbox, like what can we do out of it? We spent a bunch of money over like 2 years trying to pull reasonable, useful insights out of any of that. Long story short, we didn't get very far because it was just that data isolated in those two places without the ability to go and effectively pull in data from external sources like you were talking about, Jessica. And so much so that we wound up abandoning the project after I'd hate to even know how much money we threw at that thing. And it's also where we all sort of got, I certainly did, a little bit jaded from this chase of B2B AI. It was like there's been so many promises that didn't pan out in the space, and so it's been interesting just in the last few years actually seeing some of that promise actually starting to be delivered.
Yeah, I agree. So my background is actually academic. So I used to work a lot with data. And when I came into the sales industry, I was kind of shocked that in the B2B space, you actually don't even have enough data to really be super sophisticated. So even if you had now the emails and whatsoever, yeah, it wasn't complete, but even the data that you had, it's not telling the full picture. And if you put like data scientists on these projects, it's great, but you still need hunches and hypotheses to go after. And that's where you need like the expertise of the industry to kind of say, okay, I assume, or my hypothesis is that, and then you test against it. I think that works well, but if you just let the data speak, I think we are definitely having not too much data to actually do that. So I think the beauty is with the LLM models, it kind of accelerated at least another strand of AI that can be super impactful and useful for automation, summaries, research. But yeah, understanding fully the complete picture with ICPs, I think we still need experts and we still need managers, leadership to actually know, okay, why are we going where? What's our vision? How does it tie into our vision? I think that's something where, again, we need maybe a human in the loop as of now.
Yeah, I mean that limited amount of data. Anybody that remembers the Everstrings and Mentigos and stuff like that of the world, 10-ish years ago that came out and we're going to revolutionize lead scoring. Yeah, we're finally going to be able to tell you out of your database who are the ones that are ready to buy and all of that stuff. They raised hundreds of millions of dollars a piece, and every one of them wound up sold for pennies of the dollars and acquired by somebody else after a half dozen or so pivots. And it was really based around that. There was not enough data in people's systems, and you think, oh, my CRM has how many records, all of that stuff. Like it takes a lot of data to be able to do this stuff and do it well with any sort of reliable and interesting insights out of it. And so that was a lesson that everybody learned the hard way. I say that as somebody that was a pilot user of those systems before they even went to market or selling them. So I was actually part of helping to get these things trained and validating whether it worked or not. So I actually got to participate in, not just watch that rocky road there for a while.
Yeah.
All right.
Now, how do you create this culture around AI in the org and like figure out what types of tasks you want to automate? I'm using the word automate because you could just use Zapier to automate, but put AI on. I think there's a like leverage AI for. Jessica, how do you think through that?
Yeah, I think first, I mean, we touched upon many topics here with Jason. So start simple, right? Like if you, I don't know, have a process, look at the process and ask yourself, where can you automate a task with AI? Where can AI provide insights? And where can AI improve decision making? So it's literally these three things. So do you want to automate something? Do you want to get insights on something? Or do you want to enable someone to make better decisions? And I think what is important is that you sit down and look, okay, what is my internal setup? What are the people we are having? What is the process we are having? What is the tech stack we are using? And where in this process are we losing efficiency? Where can we, automate stuff, get better insights, or have better decisions based on? And I think that's maybe the first step to, sit together at a table and kind of look, okay, this is, I don't know, my outbound strategy. This is my inbound strategy, map that and like create a workflow, simple chart, and then try to figure out, okay, where can we automate, get better insights or make better decisions? And that's, we can then dive into like the different use cases and either internally develop solutions or check what vendors are out there to help you. And I think that is where I would start probably as a company. I usually come in later, right, when they know that they want something. But it's still like a lot of education on our end. To give you an example, we have like the super cool, enrichment tool where a bot performs like the research on accounts and in prospects. And when we're selling to VPs of sales, they're like, oh, why do I need that for? That's why I hired people. And I'm like, yeah, that's true. But, it's not necessarily a nice task to do. And also like, your team, I don't even think that they're necessarily doing it. Like they do spray and pray because they don't have the time or they're lazy to actually do research. So if you actually give them something to help them, first of all, your team will be happier, but also the people you're going after will be happier. But when we showed this tool, so VPs of sales weren't very amused at the beginning, because they're like, oh, I don't even know who to go after and blah, blah, blah. Different story. But then when we showed it to the AEs or the SDRs, they're like, oh my God, this is such a game changer. This would make my life easy. So I think when you discuss about bringing in an AI, what my biggest learning is, you have to bring in not only top leadership, but also the people who are actually performing those tasks. You have to bring them to the table, because you don't understand what they are doing on a daily basis and where you lose efficiency if you don't talk to them. And oftentimes people and teams, if they try to optimize processes with AI, they don't bring those people to the table. And I think it's a big opportunity to miss out. I don't know, Jason, what you're seeing in the field.
Oh no, I mean, I've got, as you can imagine, a lot of thoughts around this. One of the big ones to get back to a bit of a first principles piece of this. So whenever you're implementing something that's a huge change like AI, typically it comes in and gets implemented as a point solution. The point solution is, okay, hey, there's this specific thing that we're trying to solve for. It's going to only impact this person, this motion, this use case, this pain point, whatever. And there's obviously value in point solutions to things, but where things like AI become really revolutionary is whenever they become a system solution to it. And so it's how does this influence and impact everything kind of across it, and then how do you then reimagine how the organization, the entire go-to-market stuff like that work and operate relative to that system solution, as opposed to a point solution that's going in and affecting each one of these things, kind of along the margins of the edges, within each specific use case and things like that. In order for it to be a system solution, though, it has to be adopted system-wide within that. And so there's huge implications around that within organizations. It means the organization has to be, not just giving lip service to, but actually truly data-driven in what it's doing. And this has to be a culture of that. And that culture of data-driven is not just, hey, are we actually looking at our data? It means that we're coming in and we're organizing things as from a testing standpoint. Testing is not measuring. Testing is actually going in with a hypothesis that's isolated and being able to then go and look at the data and the results from it, be able to say, okay, did that prove or disprove our hypothesis we had going into that? Where do we go from that? It means that you have to have a company culture of, not just being data driven on the result side of things and testing side of things, but data driven on the input side of things. So do we actually keep our CRM up to date? Do we have good hygiene around that? Do we have good processes for making sure that happens? And all of this means that now your rev and sales ops leaders become some of the most crucial members of the company, instead of sort of an afterthought, or where they're a glorified, systems admin or something like that. Like, these people now are largely in charge of defining, the culture and the makeup of that company, because everything has to be built around, that data-driven piece inside of it. Because otherwise, you don't have the infrastructure that you need, you don't have the data that you need, you don't have the way to be able to go and implement the stuff, both from the top side of things, of are we even in a place where we can try and leverage something like that, but then also, how do we actually go and push out system solution level things into the organization, as opposed to just having souped up, point solutions to, okay, how do I go create a better email, or how do I go and streamline some of the segmentation of what I'm doing. Instead, like this goes through the entire organization, top to bottom. Okay, do we actually have dialed in what our ICP is? Do we actually have our product dialed in relative to the needs of our customers? Did we add this new feature? Was it actually adopted? Did it actually move the needle? How did that change things relative to how our reps are going out to speak to people? How does this go into retention and customer success? Like, it goes across the entire organization whenever it's done properly. And this is where things really, really start to get
Mm.
interesting within that. But of course, that's a much heavier lift to go and be able to do. And again, it goes back to completely kind of reimagining how do you actually build these organizations. And then all of a sudden, the rev ops, the sales ops roles and stuff like that have been an afterthought for a lot of organizations become the linchpin of it in order to actually be able to go and implement and leverage these types of things in the ways that I'm talking about.
Yeah, super interesting, right? Like that it always starts with a point solution and then it can enable like a system solution, because you want to start simple, but at the same time you want it all at once. So it's kind of tricky. And at the end, it's like, what's your culture internally, right? Jason, I think that's something you talk always about principles and so on. I think, what are the principles in your organization? Where do you want to go to? And then tie the technology aspect just to your principles. I think that's very crucial. Maybe also an interesting thing is it's not only about technology and process, but it's really about people, talking about culture, right? I started to observe that companies are reinventing who they're hiring. So since we are scraping job descriptions for us, right? The insights, like who's having a cold outbound motion, who's prospecting, so we can pitch them. I started to notice that companies, especially innovative companies, are hiring technical SDRs. And I looked at the profiles. It's actually someone with a computer science background that should become now like a SDR. And I'm like, wow, this is so brilliant, right? Because at the end, this person can really automate and create a lot of things top of the funnel. But it's like the new version of an SDR is someone who has technical skills. And that was interesting to me, that companies not only adapt on the technology side, but really on the people side. And obviously we knew that AI will shift the skills that we are looking at the job, but didn't expect that it also happens for SDRs, because the motion was always like, oh, we are going to replace SDRs and they will not have a job anymore. But hey, there will be just different types of SDRs. It's someone with a computer science background.
And that's what you typically see with things like this. Sorry, Jared. It moves those people that are being sort of dislocated up to a higher level of sophistication. It's not like they disappear. It's just that we're bringing that human element in at a higher level of sophistication within that. And we're taking care of some of that, sort of baseline table stakes type stuff that used to be such a menial task. It was the reason why we went and hired people straight out of college with no sales experience, a lot of time no experience at all, and said, hey, here's your list of targets, here's your script, like just go dial through it, because it was difficult to do all of these other things and be able to segment and get down to different pain points and all of that stuff. And so now that we're able to do that, that enables us to go and put people that are more sophisticated, have more training, more experience in at that human layer of it, and really level that up, because so much of that other stuff that was just brute force is now able to be taken care of. Sorry, I cut you off, Jared.
Yeah, I think what's even bigger unlock than the SDR being more technical, and yes, that's true. That person hiring the more technical SDR is hiring less of them. I just want to throw that out there. They're not hiring the same amount, just to be clear. So
but they're also more expensive.
It's not quite apples to apples. Let me keep going with this thought. We've seen the RevOps role double in our community alone in the last 12 to 24 months. I do believe it foreshadows this person in an ops role. I think ops becomes incredibly important as a top growth lever. Jason's background is marketing ops, essentially growth, all of that. And that person or persona becomes so massive. We see organizations not hiring sales anymore, but sale GTM engineers. If you know, with who I'm foreshadowing there. But it's incredible. Sales has become incredibly process driven in the SaaS world, and AI and all of this have been a core thing with that. Shout out to Adio, where you can do the automations, either point solution or you know, keep adding for different things like pipe. You have outbound with outreach or whatever solution, come in, look at the CRM steps, push through based on that, and like a cool function. But going to, the final part of this today, and thank you all for being here. This is so exciting. Using AI driven insights for better CRM and decision making. We've touched on this, if not, put a foot in the water through this conversation already. But Jessica, like, from like funnel analysis, identifying problem areas, curious as to what you feel are best practices in your experiences.
Mm. I think we touched already with Jason on a couple of points. So I think the most important thing is like first aligning the organization, like where do you want to get with this? Who do you want to target? Who did you target in the past? Who's your best customer you should be going after? And really aligning the different teams is the first step. Like that was an aha moment for me, like working with those companies is marketing is something different, sales is something different, products is something different. And if we talk to leadership, then they say something different, like the CEOs. And really what I started to do is before giving them any tool or anything to hand is really an Excel spreadsheet where they really have to just fill out, hey, give me the company names of your top customers that closed and dream customers you want to go after, and just put them all in one line and try to also understand why. Sit together at the table and try to narrow down, okay, what is it really? And once you know that, then you can come in with the technology. But I think the starting point is you really have to align the team, because if you don't align the team, you don't know what your North Star is and you don't know where you want to head to. And the technology will never be helpful or supportive, and you will never trust this technology if you don't know where to go to. I mean, that's the learning we had. And then I think what Jason talked before, right, there is a lot of data, there is a lot of signals, everybody's talking about signals and timing, and yes, you can aggregate so much of it, but what are the signals that really matter to you and your use case and your organization? What are we sometimes say top 5, like you don't need more, like top 5 should explain like the biggest part of the equation, like, right, put the rest into the error term. But top 5 signals, maybe top 10 variables if you want, so that matter to you, your business and your use case, and use them. And it's usually qualitative aspects, not only like industry size, what we can structurally measure. This will definitely distinguish the companies that listen to every signal, put every piece of data together, and have no hunch where to go after. And the reason why I'm saying it, because they're just creating noise. And the reason why they're creating noise is because they don't know how to process this information. The teams don't know how to process the information. Like Jason said, he got like this big information on the go-to-market side. He needed ChatGPT to quickly help him summarize it, right? Like we still have humans in an organization and they have, limited capabilities like cognitive, time-wise, and so on. So we really have to make it simple. So focus on the very few key aspects that matter to your business instead of putting it all together and you don't know what to go after.
Now that you touched on something that's, I mean, it's constantly a challenge across all organizations, which is how do you get to that, cross-functional, cross-department alignment around, your KPIs, your goals, all of that stuff. And there's a few things that stand in the way of that. One is just, just in general internal communication and alignment. The other is the, breaking down of the silos within the systems and the data, so you can actually get the data into a place where it can actually tell a coherent story. And having come from a company prior to Rev Genius where we did data orchestration, like we were the pipes that plugged into all of these different systems and stuff like that. Like that is a table stakes piece of it, because if you can't move the data around, you can't unify the data, then obviously the rest of it's all moot. But like I said, that's really kind of a table stakes piece of it. Where the rubber really meets the road and the challenges really are actually getting that data in a place where it's interoperable between those different systems, those different departments and stuff like that, because you may be measuring different things, you may be measuring the same thing in different ways, you may be reporting on it in different things. And so that ability to be able to normalize that information and be able to pull it together across all of these different, systems, departments, processes, things that you're doing is absolutely enormous and a huge thing that AI does and does well with us relative to that. And it enables the ability to actually even do things like come up with a true North Star. So, I find that people talking about a North Star metric is one of the more misused things out there in the space and within the industry. Because what you wind up hearing more often than not is North Stars, plural, and oftentimes it's the North Star per department or per role or whatever, or even worse, it's multiple North Stars per department or per tasks that they're doing and stuff like that. That's not a North Star. And then, even worse is when people don't understand a North Star should actually be a forward-looking metric, not a trailing metric. So I see people talk about, our North Star is revenue, or our North Star is logos, or something like that. It's like, no, that's a backwards-looking metric. Okay, revenue went up, revenue went down. Why did revenue go up? Why did revenue go down? There's nothing predictive about that. And so that's where you need to find to do a true North Star is something that's going to be across the entire organization and it's going to have predictive value within it. And so, really quick, another aside with that, but, first time I came up with a North Star metric was with my first SaaS company. We were doing high velocity PLG. And the North Star metric we came up out of that worked across the entire organization was weekly active users. And so weekly active users told us from a demand gen marketing standpoint, like how good was that cohort? How good was that source? Was that, where we attributed that population from? It told us how likely those were to be converted into paid, told our reps who to go focus on. Spoiler alert, your reps don't need to focus on the people that have basically had a failed onboarding, and they don't need to focus on the people that are really doing well within their trial. They need to focus on those people on the edge and being able to go and identify who those are that you can kind of nudge over. Then, of course, on the support side of things, you can say, okay, of all of this list of tickets, what are the ones that are actually driving people to be less active within the app? Same thing from like a churn standpoint. And so it was a true predictive North Star metric that governed the entire organization within that. But of course, there's a lot that goes into being able to normalize that data, make it be applicable across all these different roles and stuff like that. And so it's one of the areas where AI truly shines within this.
I think what when it comes to, okay, how can we leverage AI for decision making? I think it's very important for the companies, yes, alignment internally, but also understanding what does it mean to work with data. I think there are upskilling opportunities because sometimes when we talk to customers, it's not about them trying to understand AI or not, but it's really that they don't understand what it means to work with data, like correlations. Like they try to feed everything into a system, but they don't understand that two variables actually explain the same thing, and that you should be accounting for that. And I think like if you wanna prepare your teams for being an AI, let's say, enabled company, I think it's really important that not only aligning internally, but enabling, upskilling the people, trying to give them the skills to work with data. What does it mean when what statistics, like go back and take a statistics class. I think that's really so important, and that makes for us such a difference if we sell our tool to companies, like error rates, the quality of data, like it all ties back to basic statistics. And I think it's so valuable if you have an organization that understand like basic data, statistics, analysis, and so on.
I could not agree more. In fact, I was going to go there. I think one of the biggest skill sets that is missing for most people, that I think is going to become instrumental and needed, is a decent understanding of statistics. How does testing actually work? All of these things, because people have way too little familiarity and understanding of it, or they pay lip service to it thinking they do, and they don't really actually understand how does correlation actually work. How does an experiment actually run? What are you looking for within this? How do you actually do these things? And so coming from marketing and demand gen, I'm fortunate because those are things I had to learn as part of that. But I mean, I'd also think, even the younger generations on that side of things, they've been so enabled with tech on those sides of things, they never actually had to learn the actual background from a statistics analytics standpoint of how you do this. And it's where I get annoyed with people sometimes, where they get so enamored with direct digital attribution. Like, that's great, that's a great tool, that's a great guide, but it's not the be all end all of it. And hey, let's not forget, we were doing this marketing demand gen thing a long time before there were even computers, much less the ability to be able to do digital attribution on things. And so, like, let's not forget, like, it comes down to truly being able to model something of which that digital attribution can give you huge insights, but that doesn't mean it's replaced what you needed to be doing on the other side of it.
Mm.
This has been a tremendously valuable conversation. We've had two all-stars talk about AI in a few core ways. Wanted to open this up to the audience here. If you have any questions about any aspect of AI, go-to-market organization, ask away. And this webinar is being recorded. It will be distributed. But yeah, wanted to open that up and take a couple minutes there.
Do we have any questions in here?
And yeah, not at the moment, but as we do this, like, what do you foresee the future of AI in the go-to-market organization, both from a technology standpoint and a team standpoint, to best optimize that technology? Let's utilize
Jessica, while we wait for somebody to post a question, I'd love to hear what's kind of the coolest thing that you've seen somebody do on this front. Like, there's some pretty creative things that I've seen out there in the space so far, but I always love to get, hey, what's the one that you've seen where you're just like, wow, that hadn't even occurred to me.
Is this a question for the audience? Sorry, I didn't get it.
Well, I was asking, while we wait for somebody to put something in there, I'd love to hear from you, Jessica. What's kind of the coolest one that jumps out at you that you've seen?
What I've seen, I think, like, ChatGPT, right? OpenAI's chat feature was really like mind-blowing, and I think still until now I use it for so many things holistically. Like, it's super simple, but how often do I need to write a proposal? Yeah, I go to ChatGPT, hack it around. I have to, create something else, use ChatGPT. So I think for me that's definitely a game changer. In terms of other tools, we actually are a small company, so we try to follow the principle, like, less is better than more. So we use a lot of our tool. We use LinkedIn sales automation tools that are AI enabled, but I think personally and professionally, I think GPT, the chatbot, was a big game changer for me personally. And I'm surprised how few people use it extensively. Like, you can really leverage it so greatly, but I think you have to remind yourself, hey, this is a great question. I could go to ChatGPT. So kind of nudging yourself into using tech is, I think, important.
Yeah,
what about you,
like
Jason?
one of the biggest challenges I've had with it is just remembering that this is a tool that I can and should leverage in these instances. And so, like, I've had to go and actually put, like, the app and the icon in a place where, like, I would normally go and click on, like, Google or something like that. It's like, okay, now muscle memory, I go here. Oh yeah, I have this Chat GPT thing. That's probably a better use case for that than going and just simply Googling or whatever.
We have
let's see. Go ahead.
We have a question that came in, and Jason pretty much just answered this. I'm foreshadowing, but I'm a sales guy learning to be a sales marketing growth GTM persona. I like all those words together, GTM persona. Should I be learning how to control lead data insights first, a data person, or focus on the AI tools rather? This is a softball. Jason said it in different words about a minute ago. Do you want to take this? Quite overwhelming trying to keep up with AI too.
Yeah, I would start from the data and the use case standpoint and then work your way into the tech and the tooling. There's so many different tools that are out there, and there's so much stuff being pushed out by each one of those tools on a regular basis. You're absolutely right. It's virtually impossible to try and stay on top of it. Like, the number of times I've gone into ChatGPT and seen, oh wow, it does that thing now. And it's like, okay, that's a use case I've been dying to be able to use for it. And I just couldn't do it because it didn't plug into systems or it didn't have this functionality or whatever. It's like, okay, now that's there. And so I definitely focus on, kind of the block and tackling, the back end infrastructure, the understanding of how the data works and the use case and how you go put that to work, and then work backwards from there into what tech actually enables you to go and do that.
Couldn't agree more. And understanding how to run experiments is critical. AI will evolve, other tools will come in, as Jason said. Even if you wanted to use Clay, there's no less than 10 million things you could do with Clay. So you need to understand how you're using it. And maybe there is less than 10 million, but by you. But you get the idea. All right. Jessica came in, Keith. So
I think we're basically at the top of the hour.
I know this is getting rowdy over here. This is great. All right, let's continue the conversation in Rev Genius Slack. I want to thank our incredible guests for such an engaging conversation. I know I learned quite a bit from you all. I want to thank the sponsor, Adio. What's amazing about Adio is everything, but how they're building the CRM from, an AI first principle. All the CRMs out now are layering in AI after the fact, but they're starting with it at the core, which is allowing you to set up and grow your database and use it as you see fit, as is needed for your goals, versus trying to find a third-party tool just on top, which is pretty rad. And that's why they just raised another 33 million on top of their last 20 or so million. That's validation that some folks believe that they're going to be disrupting the space. Thank you all. We're done with our time for today. There will be a recording. I'm Jared. This is Rev Genius. Have an awesome day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for having us.